Dramatized in James Fenimore Cooper's Last of the Mohicans, the French and Indian War saw the native tribes fight on both sides of the 7-year conflict between the French and the British. The Iroquois joined the British, and the Algonquin Indians fought on the side of the French. Indeed, the French relied heavily on their Indian allies, even adopting their guerrilla-style warfare. But Britain's greater numbers and superior military minds and strategies defeated France by 1763. The French ceded all of Canada and eastern Louisiana to Britain. Dismayed at losing their ancestral lands, several Native American nations, under the leadership of Ottawa Chief Pontiac, continued to fight. Pontiac's words showed the determination of the Indians. It is important for us, my brothers, that we exterminate from this land this nation which seeks to destroy us. When the English are defeated, we shall stop up the ways hither so, that they may never come upon our lands again. In what became known as Pontiac's War, the Chippewa, Seneca, and Delaware, among others, launched attacks on British outposts, overrunning garrisons at Sandusky, Ohio, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Niles, Michigan, Fort Michilimackinac on the straits between Lake Huron and Lake Michigan. The ferocity and swiftness of the Indians' attacks nearly succeeded in forcing the British out of the territory west of the Appalachians. But the British sent reinforcements to their beleaguered garrisons at Fort Pitt and Fort Detroit. Meanwhile, the French refused aid to Pontiac. In 1766, the Indians finally agreed to peace. Pontiac's War was the greatest stand by Native Americans until the Plains Indians' War 100 years later. During those 100 years, Native American nations east of the Mississippi River battled with American military forces, but were never able to claim victory. For example, the Miami and Shawnee, under the war chief Little Turtle, tried to halt the onslaught of settlers streaming into the old Northwest Territory, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana. They were nearly successful. In October 1791, Little Turtle's forces attacked General Arthur St. Clair on the Ohio-Indiana border near present-day Fort Recovery. St. Clair lost more than 800 of his 1,400 men. It was the greatest defeat ever suffered by an American military force, more than tripling Custer's losses at the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876. However, at the Battle of the Fallen Timbers in 1794, General Mad Anthony Wayne's well-disciplined troops dealt the Indians a crushing defeat, forcing them to cede lands to the new United States government in the 1795 Treaty of Greenville. 15 years later, the celebrated Shawnee war chief Tecumseh and his brother, known as the Prophet, tried to organize a grand alliance of Indian nations throughout the Ohio River Valley to fight westward migration. But at the Battle of Tippecanoe in 1811, General William Henry Harrison led a group of militia who destroyed any chance of Tecumseh's Confederation succeeding. Impressed by Tecumseh's oratory, the part-white William Weatherford, known as Red Eagle, led his Creek warriors against Fort Mims on the lower Alabama River in August 1813. The fort's small group of militia fought until all were killed, and the Creeks massacred all but about 36 out of the 500 settlers who had taken refuge in the fort. In 1814, General Andrew Jackson smashed Southern Indian resistance to white settlers at the Battle of the Horseshoe Bend in Alabama. 3 years later, he took on the Seminoles in the First Seminole War and chased them out of South Georgia and northern Florida. But the Seminoles would rise up against white settlers twice more from 1835 to 1842 and 1855 to 1858. Both times, they were defeated by American military forces. One of the last skirmishes east of the Mississippi River was Black Hawk's War. A Sauk Indian leader, Black Hawk, opposed giving Indian lands to whites. For 4 months, in the spring and summer of 1832, he led his band in a fight against American militia until his followers were virtually wiped out at Bad Axe River. By the 1850s, the Indian nations east of the Mississippi River lost their final battles with the U.S. government. However, from the time of the Pueblo uprising to the middle of the 19th century, a new kind of native culture developed on the continent. For the first time, Americans were about to be confronted by a true warrior